Most people just do whatever it is they have to do to get by. They have a job, they pay the bills, they buy the groceries. Some people have a thing that they have to do or they'll go crazy. Teachers are the latter group. They have a thing that they have to do or they will go crazy. And that thing is they have to see the next generation of human beings progressing somehow. They have to look at those students, the children that they will one day rely on as adults. They have to see those people somehow becoming the future. The future. That's what it's all about. That's what teaching is all about, the future. And a lot of people want to manipulate the future. They want to sort of massage it into the direction they want it to go ideologically. A lot of teachers are ideologically driven. They think the future should be in such a way, and they think that they are able to make it that way. That's the Messiah complex, and I'll talk more about that later, the Messiah complex. But for now, I want to talk about why teachers are teachers. I'm 40 years old, and I just realized, 3 years ago, that I could be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher before that, but I realized that it was actually possible for me with my limited capabilities and knowledge to actually do it. How did I realize that, you might ask? I looked at other teachers. That's it. That's all. I looked at other teachers and I saw the way that they did things, and I observed their classrooms and how they operated, and I thought, well, shit, I can do that. But is that really how we want our teachers to be? Don't we want teachers to look at the possibilities instead of the limitations? I think we should, as teachers, and I'm talking to teachers now, I think we should look at the possibilities, not the limitations. Now, in your classrooms, there are a lot of limitations. I understand that. I've seen administrators tell me what to do. I've listened to their lectures in their offices. I understand. There's a lot of limitations. But you've got to look at the possibilities. Look at the students you've got and try to understand. Their possibilities are up to you. Messiah complex, maybe. But consider this. If you treat someone like they are fragile, they will be fragile. We humans have a trait that has been called anti-fragility. Anti-fragility is the opposite. It is not the counter, it is the opposite of fragility. Something that is fragile, you have to treat softly, or it will break. Something that is anti-fragile, I don't know how to say this, but it will break if you treat it softly. Does that make sense? Let me put it another way. Weak people suck. And when you willingly participate in making weak people, you suck even more. Isn't that obvious? That's obvious to me and to many of the teachers I had when I was growing up. That fact about humans was obvious. We have a trait called anti-fragility. This idea of anti-fragility originates with a thinker named Nassim Taleb. He writes in Nature, 2013, February 28th edition, quote, "Anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better." But to continue, we teachers often treat students as if they are fragile, as if they just can't take the criticism, that their work is not good enough. So we tend to pad that. We say things like, you could do better. But in truth, what we really mean is, you did badly. We have to start to understand that the people we are teaching are the people who are going to lead the world in the future. They're going to be your heart surgeons. They're going to be your taxi drivers. They're going to be the people making your Teslas. Do you want those people who are your heart surgeons and your Tesla builders to come into work and think to themselves, well, if I had a safe space, or if I wasn't told that my work was subpar, then my life would be great? No, we don't want those people. We want those people to look at themselves as a work in progress. What do I mean by work in progress? Well, none of us, and this is something that is going to be difficult to say to a student, but none of us are as good as we could be. And that's difficult to say because implicit in that statement is the statement, you are not good enough. Well, that's hard to say to a student. I've been there. I haven't wanted to say that to a student who's struggling, right? That student who is trying their all and they just can't quite get it. They really want to give you something that you want. You are their teacher and they want to impress you, but they just don't know how yet. And why don't they know how? Because they don't know what a predicate is, or they don't know how to construct a paragraph. But telling them that it's not good enough is the same as saying, you could do better. Well, I want students to absorb that lesson that no matter how good they're doing or how poorly, they could do better, right? Maybe they scored insanely high on whatever test your school uses, okay? Every school uses something different. But maybe they scored very, very high and they're your star pupil. But maybe they could also land an exploratory vehicle on Mars, okay? That could be your student. They could invent a cure for cancer. That could be your student. If only they would absorb the lesson. You're not quite good enough, but you are good enough to try harder. How about that? You're not quite good enough to land an exploratory vehicle on Mars, but you could try a little harder. That's not a difficult thing to say, right? But it is difficult when fragility comes into the matter. Do you want your students to be as strong as you are, or do you want them to be weaker? There's no in between. Answer the question now. Do you want your students to be stronger or weaker than you? Well, you might be a postmodernist and you might say there's no such thing as stronger or weaker. But tell that to the mountain lion or the hippopotamus, because it doesn't care. It doesn't live in your world. It lives in the real world. And the real world is the place we're sending students into. The place where their performance as a heart surgeon is going to kill someone or save their life. Now imagine your student 20 years down the road. They have killed someone on the table as a doctor, or they have saved their life. Which one of those do you want? Well, if you want them to save someone's life, good. Obviously, you're a good teacher. Of course you would want that. But you're training them to be weak. I'm sorry. You're training your students to be weak because you're padding and you're not telling them the whole truth. You're not saying what you mean, and you're not meaning what you say. And if you don't think that matters, then you're probably underestimating your students' perceptive abilities. I think kids will know when you're being genuine with them and when you're sort of massaging the words and not really saying what you mean. I think they'll detect that. And you got to ask yourself, do you want your students, as much as you care about them, or your own children, to go through the world receiving nothing but that vanilla milk toast sugar coated smile from everyone they meet? Do you want young people to be trained to be, what's the word, cynical about every smile they see? Don't train them to look at every smile from an adult with cynicism. Tell them the truth. Tell them what you think about their abilities, and they will rise to meet your expectations. Don't give them the bigotry of low expectations. And I know that word bigotry is overused, but in this context, if you're looking at a student and saying in your mind, consciously or unconsciously, well, this one can't really perform, then that is low expectations. And that, for whatever reason that you have decided, is a form of bigotry. You are deciding that they are not as good as you. Well, in that case, you probably shouldn't be a teacher. Sorry to gatekeep, and we'll talk about gatekeeping later, but if you're thinking that about your students, get out of teaching.